Hi everyone, my name is Ron Berg. Today I'll be talking about a brief history of customer relationship management, or CRM for short, or how I learned to stop worrying and love my customers. Some of you will get that reference, some of you won't, and some of you are probably just too young for it. Going back to the 1980s is when CRM first started to kind of make its appearance. And one of the ways was contact management. It's first introduced by a company called Automated Contact Tracking, or ACT, with an exclamation point, because they were excited about contact management. Came in the form of digital Rolodexes, which was a much more efficient way of keeping track of customer information and notes and any leads or sales contacts that they may have through digital means, as opposed to the old fashioned way of writing it down on fancy note cards and hoping that you can find them when you need them. And again, that just led to something called contact tracking, which is, again, just a way of keeping track of customers using better software. The other part of CRM that emerged in the 1980s was database marketing, which was first presented by Robert and Kate Kessenbaum, who actually developed new ways of thinking about customer value, especially with terms of lifetime customer value, which is to say something that's very popular now, where we don't look at one sale, we look at how many sales a customer will have over a lifetime. Um, Combine that with statistical modeling and data-specific marketing, you have the beginnings of data mining and actually using data to sell to customers one-on-one based on their personal likes and preferences. And going into the 1990s, brought about the first Salesforce automation, which was combining features of contact management and database marketing systems. Brought control systems and Siebel emerged as Salesforce automation leaders in the early 90s. Siebel, of course, coming from an offshoot of Oracle and then was later acquired by Oracle. And then later on in the decade, CRM as a function of ERP. So you had companies like Oracle, again, they eventually acquired Siebel again, had their own enterprise resource planning suites, but they started to add CRM capabilities to those as a way to allow enterprises to actually focus on their customers as opposed to only internal operations within the enterprise. BAN was another one to do that. And then SAP, of course, out of Germany, they were a company prior to the 90s, but in the 90s, they actually emerged as a leader as CRM to focus on emerging ERP technologies with a focus on CRM. But the 90s was a pretty big decade, so I couldn't fit it all on one slide. We also had call center management, which if you've ever worked in a call center, you understand a little bit about this. And if you haven't, when you call a call center and you enter in your customer information, by the time you get to a representative, it pops up everything they need to know about you, which helps the representatives make real-time decisions based on the data they have for you. It's much more complex now than it was in the 90s when we used CRTs and very outdated technology by today's standards, but it was pretty cool at the time. So there's a lot, not just for sales where they make the initial contact with the customer, but also post-sales with managing the management part of CRM customers. So if you had customer service issues or complaints or anything like that, this would help deal with that better. The only downside to it really was back then the data didn't link to other business units. So marketing couldn't really use CRM, which obviously poses a problem when they're related. So, but again, that was just the beginnings in the 90s. You also had analytics started to emerge with market segmentation by actually breaking markets into different groups and analyzing data by demographics, and closed loop marketing, which we've studied in other classes. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. Going into the 2000s, we had the dot-com bubble at the beginning of 2000s when companies weren't as profitable as we thought they were. ERP and CRM were hit pretty hard with that because they were relatively new technologies. When budgets started getting scaled back, they were seen as non-essential. So it kind of put the industry on the ropes pretty early on. However, some new ideas. One, a book by Paul Greenberg called CRM at the Speed of Light started looking at CRM in a different way, more comprehensively, where instead of just managing one aspect of the relationship, let the CRM manage all business relationships. And that really kind of sparked some new life into the industry, especially going into the mid-2000s and beyond. And then, of course, towards the late 2000s, you had Salesforce emerged as cloud-based CRM. So instead of it just being internal systems that were probably purchased through a vendor, now it was cloud-based, which allowed for some customability and allowed Salesforce to actually take on the burden of hosting all of it. So it kind of was a game changer. And then on top of that, you had social CRM, which was first introduced by Comcast, which has an awful reputation anymore, but at the time was a pretty good idea. And you see a lot of companies doing it now of engaging customers through social media platforms, which is a pretty new concept back then. And again, any more large companies, especially, that's one of their main methods of reaching their customers. So anyhow, that brings us to today. Obviously, there have been some changes since then, but I only have a few minutes left to go. So discussion questions. What do you think is the next evolution for CRM, knowing what you know from this and the rest of our classes and your own personal experiences? And at what point does CRM go too far? What kind of ethical dilemmas do we see happening? So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate we have our sources here, and I look forward to your responses. Thank you all very much.